that dog came after me and backed me up against the wall and scared the crap out of me. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Stephanie Perry and I'm a year-round house sitter. I get free accommodation when I travel by taking care of people's homes and sometimes their pets while they're away. Please make sure that you subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you'll be notified when I post a new video. I say in my videos all the time that I feel like such a genius because I feel like being a house sitter is like the world's greatest travel hack because I get free accommodation when I travel. But what I don't do enough is talk about the downsides of being a house sitter or a pet sitter, and there are some downsides. So let's talk about that today. Today I'll tell you my worst house sitting experiences. If you're taking care of somebody else's pet, no doubt your biggest fear is that their pet is going to die on you. I've come face to face with that fear more than once. I house sat for Fritz in Ajijic, Mexico. Fritz was 19 years old. Yes, 19. He had one tooth and he was incontinent. So even though I took him outside to use the potty many times a day, I still mopped the floor like at least 4 times a day. But that's not what made it the worst. I was just so afraid that Fritz was gonna die while his owner was away. I prayed for that dog every night and he made it. She came back home happy. She got to experience the balloon festival in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which was on her bucket list. And she came home to a happy, healthy Fritz, still alive, thanks to me. And prayer. I also had a big scare in Guanajuato, Mexico. Guanajuato is one of my favorite places on earth. It's just beautiful. And I had the privilege of house sitting for a woman who lived on a resort. She lived full time in a vacation villa, which meant I had access to a pool and hot tub. I took care of 2 cats, Laura and Toby. And I cooked their breakfast. They didn't eat cat food, they ate regular food. So for breakfast, I made them eggs and like chicken liver. The first time I met Laura, the cat, and I was petting her, I noticed a lump on her side and I just let it go. You know, she's a lumpy cat, whatever. But then about 2 weeks in, I noticed that the lump was bigger than it was when I first got there. This was a 1-month house sit. So immediately my mind went to the worst possible place. She's got cat cancer and she's gonna die. I texted the pet owner and I was like, hey, you know, she's eating fine and she doesn't seem to be in any pain, but you know, I'm a little concerned about that lump. And she was like, what lump? And then I started really freaking out in my head. She didn't even know the cat had something going on with her before she left. So anyway, the kind concierge helped me put Laura into a cat carrier, which is not easy, and took me to the veterinarian, and the vet was like, oh, no big deal, it's just an abscess. She had gotten scratched by the other cat and it got infected. So I took her for 3 days. I had to take her every day to the vet so they could inject her with antibiotics, and they drained the pus out of the abscess, and the cat was fine. She barely held a grudge against me for taking her to the vet. And the rest of my time in Guanajuato was amazing. Did I mention that it's my favorite place? I made a video about my favorite countries to travel to. Mexico is absolutely on the list. If you haven't watched that video yet, click the link up here to watch it. So all was well with Laura and with old Fritz, but the pet dying isn't the only fear when you're a house sitter. You also get afraid that your house sit is just going to be canceled out from under you and you're not going to have any place to stay. I generally travel to really cheap places so that if I do need to pay for my own place to stay, if this happens, I can do it. But I've also house sat in some really expensive places where I wouldn't want to have to foot the bill for, you know, 2 or 3 weeks or 2 or 3 months, like London, which is expensive, and San Francisco. I booked 2 months straight of house sits in San Francisco in December and January of last year. December and January are really busy periods for house sitters. It's really easy to get booked during that time period. So I booked myself solid for those 2 months. Most of the house sits were one to 2 weeks long. I had agreed to dog sit for a family in San Francisco who was going to go to Hawaii for a couple of weeks. At the very last minute, we're talking like less than a week before her house sit was supposed to start, she contacted me and said that her husband had broken his leg. I think he'd broken his leg. And while he was in surgery, they discovered that he had bone cancer. So of course they're not going on their trip. Actually, there was some back and forth where she was like, well, maybe we'll still go. The doctor said that, maybe we could still go. But of course they ended up not going. She was very apologetic and very kind. And she even offered to let me stay in her house for those 2 weeks and just stay in there. They had like a basement apartment. It was a really big house. I found that the people who look for house sitters and pet sitters on trustedhousesitters.com generally tend to be very open people. They're the kind of people who will let a stranger come stay in their house while they're gone. So they tend to be kind and open and, not mean jerks. And so this lady was absolutely not a mean jerk, but I told her no problem. Don't worry about me. I think it was the first 2 weeks in January, and I did book 2 house sits to cover those dates. And I only had to pay for a place to stay for 1 night. In Oakland, hostels were like $50 per night still. So yes, last minute cancellations are a big fear when you're a house sitter. I just try to set myself up so that I can either 1, find another house sit very quickly, 2, just pay for a place to stay in a hostel or an Airbnb for that time period instead, or fly someplace cheaper. In San Francisco, if it had been a week or longer that I was not booked to house sit, it actually would have been cheaper for me to fly down to Mexico and stay in a hostel in the Tijuana area and then come back for my next house sit than it would have been for me to stay in San Francisco. It's so expensive. Why? Okay, so after that house sit was canceled, I booked a couple other house sits to make up for that time. One of those house sits was in Los Angeles. I decided to rent a car and head down to LA. I hung out with my friend Tiffany at the Women in Travel Summit, pop-up workshop that they had. I just interviewed Tiffany from tiffanytravels.com in my video, volunteering to get free travel with Tiffany. Click the link there to watch that video. So I wanted to go to that LA meetup. I rented a car, rode down to LA from San Francisco, and I got a 3-day, 2-night house sit down there in LA in Santa Monica. This is the one that I would call my worst house sit yet. There were warning signs, which I ignored because I really wanted to house sit in LA so that I could go to that conference on that weekend. The first warning sign was that even though she'd had house sitters and pet sitters before, she had 0 reviews on her site. And a lot of people feel like it's better if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. I've been totally guilty of this myself. So if they've had house sitters before, but they don't have any reviews, red flag. She had plenty of pictures of her apartment and of the dog, so I knew it wasn't a problem with the space. It wasn't like it was a dirty place or, anything like that. It turns out that the problem was just the dog. He was a recent rescue. He was a mixed breed, not really big, but very strong. It took a lot of extra strength to walk the dog, but I didn't get the full story until the next day. So evening 1, I fed the dog dinner, walked him, took his leash and collar off, no problem. He got in his kennel to go to sleep and I closed him in there. Everything's good. The next day in the morning, I get up to walk him, and it was a nice Saturday walk. We walked on the Santa Monica Pier, really pretty day. I get back to the apartment to take the collar off of him, and I couldn't get it off. Because he was a puller and a hard dog to walk, she had this collar, I can't remember what it's called, but she had this collar that has prongs that go inward into his neck. They don't hurt unless he really starts pulling. The rest of the time, they're just resting there. But to get the collar off, you have to squeeze it to get it off. And when I tried to get that collar off that dog and failed after the first attempt, he let me know that I was not going to get a second attempt. That dog came after me and backed me up against the wall and scared the crap out of me. So I gave him commands and got him to chill out. But I was like, I am not trying to take that thing off. He can keep it on for all I care. So I walked him a couple more times that day. No problems putting the leash on, taking the leash off, but he would not let me even try to get the collar off of him. So I texted the dog owner, and that's when she gave me the full story. She was like, oh yeah, don't try anymore, just leave it on him. And I was like, well, can I call a neighbor? Is there a neighbor that he'll trust more than me? And she was like, no. And the last pet sitter had to call animal control because of the way he went after her when she tried to take the collar off. And I was like, That would have been good to know. So for more than 24 hours, the dog kept the collar on. He laid in his kennel and he went to sleep and he ate fine. And when it was time to walk him, he would let me put the leash on and off, but I had to keep that prong collar on him. There was even another collar in the house where she could have just been like, just use this regular collar. But she specifically instructed me to use the prong collar without telling me that he doesn't like the on and off process for the prong collar. So word to the wise, if something looks suspicious, pass by. Like either don't take the house sit at all or ask more questions. If I had asked her specifically, you've had pet sitters before, why don't you have any reviews, or what happened with your last couple of pet sitters, I would have known this whole situation and it could have been avoided. The dog didn't carry a grudge against me for leaving the collar on. I let him sit at my feet while we watched TV. I wouldn't let him lay on the sofa with me. But I did let him hang out with me in the living room, and I gave him treats, and the rest was all good as long as I didn't get near the neck area. Remember that you don't have to pet sit to house sit. If you do want to house sit in order to get free accommodation when you travel, you can do it without taking care of pets. Just those house sits are usually for longer periods. It's usually people who are going to be gone for at least a month who want somebody in their house while they're away. The countdown clock is ticking. My free house sitting course will be launching very soon. So make sure that you click the link in the description box to give me your email address so that I can notify you when the house sitting course is live. I'm really excited about it. I've told you my worst house sitting experiences, and I still house sit all year round. So that should tell you that the good by far outweighs the bad. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave your questions in the comments. Also, please hit that like button if you like this video and share it with your friend who likes to travel for free. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Do you want to come in?